I need to lose some weight, man.
TV will show it. It's one of the reasons I stayed in radio. I didn't want to mess with TV.
So you were in radio?
Yeah, 5 years. Right out of college. It's one of the things I wanted, and we'll talk about that during the show. It's one of the things I wanted to do all my life.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with that business and made a strategic decision 5 years into it that I needed to move in a different career path. Opportunity came up.
Right.
But yeah, I was doing football games. I've never been much of a basketball fan.
Right.
But I was the number 2 announcer. This was in a small East Texas town, and they had a junior college there. And so from January to, I guess, early March, I was doing 6 games a week. Only nights I was off was Wednesday night and Sunday. I was doing a game Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that's 5 games, but sometimes those on Saturday were doubleheaders. And not getting paid much for it, but enough to where I could sock that money away for rainy day and live on my salary. And then we did high school baseball. That particular city now has their college now has a baseball program, so I probably would have been doing that. But they did baseball, loved doing baseball because you can just talk forever on stuff. And then was doing junior college and high school football.
Yeah. If I was going to announce something, I think baseball would be it.
Yeah, I mean, and I was very fortunate that I had a mentor who is now in Greenville. I need to catch up with him. I hadn't talked to him in a long time. That taught me how to project, how to use my voice, and he and I worked together for 3 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this guy told me was, at first when I kind of stumbled on it, talked over him or whatever, he says, "Look, I'm going to give you 3 seconds between after every play. I'm going to take a breath. We'll give you 3 seconds. If you don't jump in, I'm going to keep going. So if you want to make a comment or two, you need to jump in." And we got that down to a science.
Right. 3 seconds is actually a pretty long time, especially on radio.
Well, and I would jump in almost immediately. You don't want any airtime. It's dead, right? So jump in. And I was doing, and so anyway, I did that for 3-4 years and ended up at a radio station in Tyler where I was doing hard news, afternoon news block 4, 5, and 6, with the 5 o'clock being an extensive afternoon report kind of thing.
Right.
And so I was getting tired of doing the news stuff. I wanted back in sports when this opportunity came to work with the chamber there. So.
Welcome to Education is Painful, the podcast where you will learn. This is a Toro Strategic Production, part of the Engine Media Group, in association with Hearst Digital Media.
So, my guest today is SVP, Senior Vice President of the Richardson Chamber of Commerce and Tech Titans. Has been a Director of Economic Development, worked with Chambers of Commerce all over Texas, really. Friend and colleague, Paul Bendel.
Well, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. I
appreciate you coming out. I want to ask the one question that I feel like a lot of people really want to ask but are too afraid to ask, which is, what is a Chamber of Commerce?
Well, a chamber has Chamber of Commerce activities have been around, and chambers have been around since really the days of the American Revolution. New York City actually chartered the first chamber in the new United States in 1782.
Right.
And it started out as business organizations, right? A group of merchants getting together for common reasons and so forth. And as the movement grew, more cities got chambers of commerce, and you moved into the 1900s and into modern industrial America. Chambers became more active in their primary purpose, and they're still. Their primary purpose is economic development. Every chamber who's been around for a long time is doing some kind of economic development. That could be the basic site selection visits and prospect development. It could be creating ways for businesses to connect through networking events, or in some of the cases our special events where we're talking about a particular subject, but there are people that have that interest in that subject. And there's a couple of other things too that go into it, but it's primarily economic development and community development. Now the chamber business has changed since I first started, 39 years ago. We are still very much involved in economic and community development, but I think about 10, 20 years ago, you begin to see chambers take on a different role in the community. More engagement in developing community projects, getting away from some of the projects and programs that might have been great for the times, but no longer really perhaps relevant. An example, the Christmas parade. Chambers used to do Christmas parades, and many still do, particularly small communities. We discontinued ours. We gave it to the city of Richardson a long time ago because it was not something that our board and our community felt that they wanted the chamber to be doing. It took a lot of staff time.
I can imagine.
And so, and so we're looking at ways to continue to develop programs that are important and engaging to the community. Now, I think over the last since the Great Recession in 2008, the organizations that we're a part of, such as the American Chamber of Commerce Executives, Texas Chamber of Commerce Executives, those are organizations that help with our professional education. You are seeing them going from, say, 10 years ago to chambers being relevant in the community. We want to be leading the band, we want to be taking part in what's going on, to now we want to be more engaged, more involved in some of the major issues, going from relevance to importance, maybe even essential. And what I mean by that is you're going to see chambers becoming more and more engaged in things like diversity, inclusion, equality, those kinds of issues, because that's what our business community is dealing with. We started a DEI program this year. We haven't really announced it yet. We're doing a lot of groundwork, working with some of the major industries in the community, and I think later on this year we'll be able to announce it. And our goal initially, I think, is to be able to be a resource to companies that cannot or do not have the resources to hire a DEI director, and some of the major companies, are doing that now. That's an example of what we're doing. It's still economic development, right? Because you're doing something that keeps the businesses engaged and in the community. So that's kind of where we're going with this right now. I think the first chamber in Texas was founded by San Antonio right after the Texas Revolution, around 18. Maybe about the time that Texas became a state, so 1848, something like that.
This is not some newfangled thing that the kids came up with a couple of years ago.
No, it's not, and like I said, it's changed. Everybody thinks of the chamber doing the Christmas parade or the July 4th parade, or having the courthouse square activities on the 4th of July, and some chambers still do that, and it's a very important part of those smaller communities. But in a community that's as big and diversified, I'm talking about economically, as Richardson, we took a little bit of higher ground in saying we want to be something that's relevant to business.
And that would be, so it's economic development. I'm just trying to kind of summarize in my own head. The idea is to get businesses into the community, keep them there, and help them be profitable in the community. Is that a fair?
Yes, that is fair. And so you think about how that works. A company decides to move into a community, or more importantly, a company decides they're going to stay in a community. That happened in Richardson with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas. 2011, I think, they made the commitment to build that new building out there on the north side, up there by Gallatin Park. And that's the state headquarters for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so we have to be able to work with them to make sure that they can have the kind of business atmosphere that they want. Now, the other part of that is education, in developing the workforce of tomorrow. And so through our STEM activities on the Tech Titan side,
Right.
which is our technology trade
Right.
organization, it's an affiliate organization that you're engaged with,
Right.
and with the Chamber.
I was going to say full disclosure.
Yeah. And the Chamber, we're doing things that are helping kids get more interested in STEM education, and helping businesses connect with campuses
Right.
to be able to help provide those resources that are needed. That's economic development
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of I've just personal experience. It feels like a lot of businesses don't take full advantage of the opportunities. I'm thinking specifically of the educational institutions that are in the area, but I would imagine that there's a lot of businesses that are not taking full advantage of the services that the Chamber of Commerce offers.
Well, and that is always a challenge, right? You've got the large companies that are so diverse with the number of people that they've got working
Right.
for them. There are many companies, large companies, that probably their employees don't even know they're members of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
Don't even know that they could be, come to our activities and be a part of our events. Small companies who don't have the time. Maybe they've got 8 people on the staff and they don't really have time to
Right.
come to a luncheon event or to an annual meeting that's now been moved to a luncheon event. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of interest. I think it's more of an understanding of what they can get out of it and
Right.
what they will get out of it, not only for them, but for their business. You've got
Right.
business contacts being made, and then the more it's like anything else. The more you engage, the more you're going to get out of it. And those companies, small companies, large companies that are really involved with us, that are on our committees, on our boards, are out there doing things, are the ones that are going to get recognized because they're part of the activities.
Right. Yeah, and it's not just recognition. It's not just having a logo up on a wall somewhere. It's the connection, like you say. It's the connections that you make there.
Yeah, you've got to be able to get involved in a committee and be a part of it. You can't just, even in a committee meeting, you can't just sit there and listen to what's going on. You got to say, yeah, I'll take on some of that responsibility.
Yeah.
Some of the programs that we do, or in fact, all of our programs that we do are derived out of the committees and the people who serve on those committees. And, somebody says, hey, let's do something on this topic, and somebody else says, oh, well, I know somebody who'd be a good speaker for that.
Yep.
And, okay, now you're in charge of the program because you know that speaker, right?
You just volunteered yourself.
And we produce it on the staff level, so we take care of registrations and collections of the payment, cover lunch expenses, and things of that nature. Now we're producing it hybrid in many ways. So we're going to take care of all that part that allows the committee person to work with the speaker on the content, the delivery, and obviously perhaps even MC the program. So that's where you get that connection, but you've got to be engaged. So I think many people just quite frankly don't understand exactly how to get engaged. We do member orientations all the time, new member orientations about how to do things. And this year, the ones that we've done virtually have been a little bit more successful because people have to get out of their office to go to our office to be able to see them. Now they can just view it on screen. So I'm hoping that that's going to be one of the trends that changes, that people get more engaged.
Yeah. Is there a day of the week that goes by that you don't have some sort of event that you're involved with?
Well, actually, yes. We did not have an event today, as an example.
Until I came along and created
what we've got are tons of committee meetings because all of our functions have a committee that usually services it. I've got an event tomorrow evening. It's on the chamber side of the house. And usually the last week of the month, most of the events are over. The big, heavy week of the month where our events are is the third week. Because you got on the tech side, you've got the third Friday Tech Industry Luncheon. On the chamber side, our Women in Leadership program, which is one of the strongest programs in the chamber, they have a quarterly luncheon event. And they also have their committee meetings during Wednesday. And so their next event's coming up in about a month. And so that's on Wednesday and so forth. So yeah, it ebbs and flows. There are no 2 days that are the same. And one of the things you have to learn to do, we have not had to deal with it this year much because the office is still closed. And we're looking at what we need to do to reopen. Now that doesn't mean staff has not been there. We've had staff there from the get-go. And even during the lockdown, some staff were permitted to come in just to keep the place operating. But when it's open, people walk in the door. You have committee meetings and people want to visit. And so you have to learn to manage your day with some interruptions.
Right.
And that's most of the time that works out really, really well. And so that's going to be kind of an adjustment on our part. But there's no 2 days that are alike.
Yeah. So if you're looking for stability and every day is just like the last day, that's not the job for you.
Yeah, we're not sticking the screws in the in the platform or whatever that those people do with great ease and care. We're not doing that, but things will change all the time, and I think that's one of the other things that is good about this organization and this business is that it is constantly changing, moving forward.
Okay. And you've mentioned several times you've used the word business associated with Chamber of Commerce. This is not a government function.
Well, chambers of commerce across the country are 501c6s.
Okay.
So that puts them in the same category as a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis Club, a service club. And that designation was made back in the day when the IRS came into being and we started paying income taxes and so forth. Because many chambers in the early part of the last century did not have staff.
Right.
Staff really came into being right after World War II, where a lot of chambers began to get professional staff and that kind of thing. So we're a 501c6. The other reason, quite frankly, is that chambers have a lobbying effort. We have a very strong advocacy program. Our CEO, Bill Spruill, has been in Austin on numerous occasions, served on the chairman of a governor-appointed committee this past regular session.
And Bill's really good about promulgating what has gone on with that.
He's very articulate in that regard. So it's a passion for him.
You can see that too.
And he's we do a DC fly-in. We did it this year virtually, but we do a trip down to Austin to see our legislators. Usually in the odd number of years. We didn't do it because the legislative session meets, in those odd years, and then the even years we go to D.C. And neither one occurred this year. We did it virtually, but he's been very. So and that's the other thing. So a lot of government legislation has viewed chambers of commerce as political, because now some chambers own and operate a PAC, a political action committee. But that's completely separate with its own separate board of directors and its own fundraising. We do not commingle the funds. But back to your question about government operated, chambers are not government operated. Never have been. Some chambers, it all depends on the city. They are all organized based on what the needs are of the city that they serve. But by and large, we're not government. So in our case, we do not have any relationship with the city of Richardson except our economic development organization called the Richardson Economic Development Partnership, which was formulated in 1984. And so the city pays the chamber a grant every year to run the economic development activities of the city of Richardson. Now, that's a little bit different than say a Frisco, which is what is known as a half-cent sales tax city. In 1989, the legislature adopted legislation that created a half-cent sales tax for economic development. And those cities can take that, it's dedicated, and they can do whatever they want with it as long as it plays within the rules of economic development. It's changed a little bit. I mean, the older new ballpark, whatever it's called, ballpark in Arlington as I call it, that was opened in 1994, that was predecessor to the current one, was paid for by half-cent sales tax monies. Richardson, Garland, Irving, maybe a couple other cities are maxed out on their sales tax revenue. We can't go above the state mandated 6.25%. So, and because of that, it's because of DART. Okay, we're fortunate in our community to have 4 DART rail stations. It's the most of any community outside of Dallas. So they came up with this option of saying, why don't we let the chamber manage our economic development activities? Now, when I say that, it's a hand-in-glove operation. The chamber and the city work tirelessly together, meetings, city council meetings, prospect visits when they come to town, those kinds of things. Our economic development team makes a quarterly report to the city and makes an annual report every year, usually in the first quarter of the previous year's activities. So it's transparent. The money is not commingled with the chamber funds. It's against the law to do that anyway.
Okay.
You cannot mingle, whether it's hotel motel tax for Convention and Visitors Bureau operations or economic development. Any monies you get from government agencies have to be kept separate. So we are not connected to the city except in that regard.
Okay. You threw out a number. I'm not going to repeat it, but you've been doing this for a while. I mean, if that's not a passion for something, I don't know what is. What is it that drew you into this, or that keeps you in it today?
Well, I don't think anybody. In fact, I was on a call last week with a bunch of other chamber professionals from around the country. Somebody made this comment. I don't think anybody plans to be a chamber professional. You know, when you're growing up, you want to be an astronaut, you want to be a doctor,
Right.
you want to be somebody in technology that, you know, finds the cure for cancer or whatever.
Sure,
You ask them, and I'm going to go back, and I don't know if he's listening or not, I'm going to go back and use my son as an example, who's now an adult out on his own. When he was about 10 or 11, I was making a presentation at a class for points towards the certification.
Right.
And so I was down in Austin, and he and my wife were with me, and I asked him, he said, what are you going to talk about? And I told him, I said, so let me ask you this question. You're 11 years old. I said,
Right.
What do you get when you join a chamber of commerce? Out of the mouth of young children, oh, you get a membership plaque. And I said, well, yeah, you get that, but you get a lot more.
Right.
And so you take a look at this business and this industry, the first thing you've got to have is a passion for people.
Right.
To work with all the different people, not only just your office staff, but the people that are on the committees and the boards.
And that's some crazy. There's some wild personalities going on there.
Well, there always is, and there's been some education.
Some really great people involved with the Richardson Chamber.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Yeah, it's been one of those things that with some educational opportunities that I've been through these organizations I mentioned earlier. I've been able to, and experience in itself, I've been able to be able to gauge when I walk into a room, say a committee that's meeting for the first time, who may be the real leaders and who might be the ones that hang back. And the key is getting everybody engaged in that conversation. So that's a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I've had a great career at it. Met some fantastic people along the way. This is people who were, startup businesses, all the way to people who were millionaires in their respective industry, government leaders. Celebrities and things of that nature, which is not the reason you get into it. I got into it because it was a way for me to continue my journalism activities. My first job was what is today is known as a communications director. It wasn't known then. It was just an assistant manager in a smaller
Communications
way.
director sounds better.
It does. But I was producing a 8-page tabloid-size newsletter.
Okay, wow.
Hard printing, writing the stories, and doing all that stuff. And today, our communications department does the same thing. It's just digital, right? And it takes a lot of time to do all that. But yeah, I was able to do all that, and I just fell in love with the business, and spent a few years working for one community, and went to work as president of a smaller community. And was there about 12 years, and we were involved in a major highway project development that has really spurred a tremendous amount of economic development growth in that community. Shortly after the highway was built, that community opened up a 900-acre business park. Right.
Those highway projects can make or break a community.
It's a tough process, particularly. Well, I was going to say particularly small communities, but I don't think so. I think it's communities across the spectrum, because it's hard. In this case, this was a bypass. This was in that community. There was a U.S. highway that came through town, and this project started in '68, and I went to work for them in '89, and we decided we really needed to get this built, and it went around the east side of town, and there were those in the community that did not want it and fought a hard battle. We're still friends with those folks. That's one of the things that I think for the most part was good about it, is that we had differences of opinion, but we were able to maintain friendships, and because it's a small town of 12,000 people. and but we knew that it needed to be built, and we went back. It took us 12 years, and when I left that community, they had just started construction on it. It's been in existence now since I think about 2003. That industrial business park opened up in 2004, something like that, and they're just they're just booming right now. So yeah, those can be very polarizing projects. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to a high school football game, Sunday school on Sunday morning, getting a cup of coffee. But hey, tell us about what's going on with TxDOT in that project. But it was well worth it. I think at the end, one of the things that I learned, and it's not to blow my own horn here or anybody else's in this business, but I think you want to say after you've spent a period of time in any one community, what is it that you leave? What is your legacy? How are people going to remember you and what you did?
Yeah. And hopefully that's a positive.
So far, with the exception of one or two cases, it's been a very positive place. Every place I've gone.
One thing that jumps out at me really strongly there is you're talking about projects that go for years and years, not days and weeks and months. So you've really got to have a long-term view.
Yeah, you do. You've got to be able to have a long-term view, be able to realize the process that it takes to get you there. I mean, for one thing, you have to understand how the state of Texas works.
Right.
when you're talking about
that's probably a degree program in and of itself.
Somewhere along the way, I learned how to write reports. We would go down to the Texas Transportation Commission to request, and this came in stages. Before you even got to the construction contracts, you had to deal with right-of-way, and this whole issue of being able to just go in and take your property, even though it's a fair price, eminent domain as they call it, it can be quite taxing. But we had 3 different routes, worked with the local district office there. We went down to TxDOT, I think 6 times in that 12-year period to make a presentation. It was the first 3 or 4 or 5 where we need to get the right-of-way purchased. Here is what our contribution is going to be from the local governments. Can you fund it? And of course, the first couple of times they said no. And what they do is, and they have a very serious ranking system, and they don't compare projects such as the expansion of 635 between the High 5 and Highway 80 Mesquite with projects in Kilgore or Abilene or a Lubbock. They all stand on their own merit, but they're going against projects of like nature. Okay. So it's a process to go through, and it took a long time to get it through. And we were able to do it, and that's that you look back on that, you look at all the people that were involved. It really is a good feeling to know that made a difference in that community.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is some of those, really any of those big things like that are gonna take time for them to get approved, get launched, and to see the positive impact come back. And I think a lot of people in business, a lot of people in just daily life could stand to take a longer term view, especially when we're younger.
Well, that gets into a whole different subject, doesn't it? When we're younger and things look differently. I think it was an educational experience for me because my staff and I put together the documents. We're talking about 3 commissioners plus the director and 2 others for engineering supervisor or something like that. And we had it was this big, maps and documents and commitments outlined by the various municipal governments. And one of the ways it got built was the cities and the county there continued to pour more money into it. Otherwise, it might not have moved up that ladder. I think it jumped from like number 8 to number 2 within a month after we made a presentation, based on the amount of money that we had gotten for the committed to the right-of-way. So that's just an example of a project that a chamber will be involved with.
Yeah. But you mentioned something earlier that I think would be interesting to dig a little deeper on, if you don't mind. You mentioned sitting in a room, and I'm kind of imagining, because I've been in the Tech Titans boardroom there at the chamber, and I'm just sort of imagining sitting in that room, and you kind of walk in and have that sense of who's going to be the real leaders, the drivers of moving things forward. Because that's what I kind of define leadership as inspiring change and movement.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be movement that drives a change, but you're either going to be changing or moving or both.
Right.
And that's I can certainly see where that would be a skill that you would need to develop and be able to develop there. But can you give us a little a couple of takeaways on you riff on that a minute?
In terms of the leadership piece, or how you identify it or how you make it work, or all of the above.
Sure.
I was fortunate. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, along with ACCE and other organizations, does a good job.
That's the American...
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and then the Association of Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber.
And the reason it's called the Association is because it now includes all of the chambers in Canada. So it's really the North American.
Right. That's good.
And so I got a chance to go through an organizational management. It was almost like a master's degree program. In fact, I would even consider it as such. And they taught you the basics of managing a business, managing your budget. I remember so long ago, how to choose a computer for your office was one of the courses. Today you think, my gosh, have we changed? And so there was a 3-year, this was a week-long course, taught at a local, in this case it was at SMU. Now they still teach them at major universities. They're 4 years. They've condensed some of them. And there was a 3-year course, so that was 9 total hours on leadership and power management.
Okay.
And they identified the 3 different kinds of leadership, and they talked to you about how to identify those when you walked in. And I still have the books in my office, and so occasionally I pull those out because I don't always remember all 3 of them. But it just kind of gave you a sense of being able to read a room. I'm not an expert at it by any means.
Right.
It just is a tool that I use. I don't use it as a fail-safe. It's a tool that I use to find out who's really going to be engaged in this and who's not. And one of the things you can look at, you can pretty well tell in the first 5 to 10 minutes of a meeting who the real leader is going to be.
Right.
Because first of all, you have to remember leadership is earned by the people in the room, right? You follow that person because they're doing something, or they've said something, or they act like a leader. And as a result, you can usually see how there's a couple others. There's frenetic leadership, where the guy who does, or the lady who does all kinds of work but never gets anything done. But they're always busy. They're always busy trying to get something done because they want to show you, oh yeah, I'm engaged. And I remember some of the others I should have studied, I guess, for the test. But it was a good example of and we also took some courses on how we can step back and relax. Mm-hmm. Some electives on learning to, and I still think it's appropriate today. I heard something recently about it. Go in your office after a busy morning or something, either right before or after lunch, turn your lights off, turn the computer off, and lay back in your chair for 5 minutes and just unwind. Yeah. And I do that on occasion. Sometimes I don't have time. I'm sorry. But there's a lot of different ways in managing the people. And you got those people that make one meeting out of a year, right? But when they come in, they change the whole scope of the project that you and your team have just, and you see that in businesses today.
Yeah, absolutely.
How they can change the whole scope of that. And that was the other thing that was great about this highway transportation project. We had a highway transportation committee that worked together as a team with the council and the county government. And I think that's indicative of anything that's successful.
That building a team, as somebody who builds teams, myself, I mean that's the dynamics there are difficult to predict, but when you get a good team together, you usually know it.
Yeah.
Like they're stuff's going to get something's going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. and then the question is, how do you gracefully weed out those that are not good team players? And that's true of any situation.
Not so good with the graceful part.
Well, some people are more blunt than others, but that's one of the things in this business that is a challenge, particularly to new people who just started, is I can't go into a committee meeting and tell you, you're doing a lousy job, you're out, right? That's not going to work with a volunteer.
Right. Yeah, definitely not.
You know, you've got to go in there and say, look, we got a problem, something's not working right. What can we do? Maybe you're on the wrong committee. Maybe you're in the wrong organization. Maybe you need to belong to this organization instead of ours, and that kind of thing. And so it's somewhat of a coach, if you will.
Right.
I was on a call today about a potential program, and this was a brand new member on the tech side, and we talked a little bit about getting them engaged and making sure they were placed in the right group of people that would get them the connections that they want, because that's what it's all about, is business connections, right?
Right.
You know that, you've been involved.
Right. Yeah, and that's I mean, you guys do a great job with it, but it's I can see where that would be challenging, because we've talked, prior to this, we've talked about that your job there is not to be the leader of, to be the chairman of a committee or something. You're really supposed to be facilitating these committees, but yet at the same time, there's a very strong element of a certain type of leadership that you're having to do there, because I don't think anything would get done. No, I mean, seriously, I mean, some committees are better than others, obviously, but a lot of times it's, you and Andrea and some other people that I shouldn't even try to name names because I'm so bad with it, but if you guys weren't there doing the behind the scenes stuff, keeping tri-chairs engaged, keeping the lights on, and making sure meetings happen when they're supposed to happen and things like that, that it would be very difficult to, especially because it's a volunteer and we've all got other things that we're supposed to be doing with our time besides, there's always something that's eating up your time. But I mean, I think that's, everybody sees that guy who comes in, the Elon Musk, who comes in, takes something over and just completely changes the direction of something. And a lot of times it works out really well. I mean, a lot of times this is somebody who can see, a connection that needed to be made that is the launch pad to something, really big. But at the same time, with probably a few exceptions in the world, most of the time that guy's not going to stick with the project to completion. Yeah. I mean, he may be the one who gets credit for it because they have a tendency to show back up at the right time.
They do.
But that's not going to be the person who carries it through and makes the operations happen. And that there's a special kind of person, a special kind of leadership that's required. When you are in that meeting, identifying, who might be a good fit for this, is that one of the things you're looking for? Is somebody who's going to help keep operations operating?
It's a combination of factors. It's not just one. Somebody who's going to take the ball and run with it and commit to something and then follow it through, and then doesn't call me back in 2 weeks and say, I really am not going to have time to do it. Now, granted, that happens. I just got assigned to a new project, so I got to bow out of the committee or whatever. I think the challenge for us is knowing when to push and what not to push in those meetings. We, in any chambers like this too, it's the volunteers that are members of the organization that serve on those committees that make up the programming, right? You've seen it happen. But at times I got to step in and say, wait a minute, that's not going to work, or no, we've already had that speaker, or no, we can't talk about that, or whatever the case may be, the issue is. And I feel like a lot of times we're telling volunteers, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that.
Right.
But our job is basically to make sure that you stay within the goals and objectives of the chamber, that your projects are within the mission statement, that you don't do anything illegal, you don't go out and buy a bunch of stuff or do a bunch of stuff that's not supposed to be good. And then the last thing is make sure that you stay within your budget.
Yeah.
And that's become more challenging in COVID because of the way things are structured, and it's going to be a tough 2022 trying to figure out what we're going to do from a budget perspective. But that's another subject we can talk 3 hours about. It's just a matter of knowing when to push and what not to push. And I will say, you get attached as a staff person. You get attached quickly to those people on the committee who are the worker bees that get things done, that stay engaged. And over a period of time, the ones that can drive things, and they do it so smoothly you don't even know what's happening sometimes. Those are the people that really make the difference. And whether it's the board of directors, or whether it's the golf tournament committee, or whether it's this committee or that committee. And the problem that we have, and I think it's true of any volunteer organization, is we burn them out because they get so active and they get so engaged. They're doing more for us sometimes, or at least that's the impression, than they are for their own business. So some of their employers say, we're going to move you around and kind of change that up. But that's just part of business, period, right? You've got to be able to run with ebb and flow of it. But we really do appreciate the work that the volunteers do. And I will tell you, I have not seen very many programs in my career that were not successful without a committee behind it. Staff-driven projects just are not as successful. And why is that? That's because you've got committed volunteers who are out there helping us sell the sponsorships, open doors that we can't open, talk to people, build it up, get people engaged. And there's just only so many hours in the day, and so staff is not as good at that. Plus, we don't know what's going on out here. We don't ever get, not that we don't ever get out of the office, but I don't know what's going on with this company or that company on a daily basis. So it gives us a chance to expand our boundaries a little bit.
Well, it kind of comes back to, you mentioned it already, the connections. And that's, I've spent some time in the military, long time ago. And even in the military, which people think of as being very hierarchical and very, you do it because I order you to do it kind of stuff, to really get anything done, you got to have the connections. Like you got to know people, you got to know how to approach the people, what to ask for, and when, things like that. Even in something that's from the outside looks to be this very hierarchical and top-down organization, it's still very, very much of a networking system that actually gets things done.
And you've got to motivate them to make them want to do it for you as their commander, or the committee chair in our case, to get somebody to get it done.
It's always better if they think it's their idea.
Well, of course. There was a time in this business where we said very little at committee meetings, and now I think we are more engaged in the conversation, which I think is good because it bounces that perspective off. And I think our programming is better for it.
I think it feels like not to get into a dissection of that, but it feels to me like that, because there are other places where this applies, that some of us, me for example, our perspective is so limited in the terms of the context of like Tech Titans, that you being there and having the longer term perspective on what has worked in the past, what we can't do that kind of stuff, and even to the point of saying that particular speaker has been on a panel 3 times this year already, and it's only March, so maybe we need to find somebody else to give somebody else a chance to talk.
It's a management process, is what it is, and like I said, we feel like we tell you guys no too many times, but that's not what our intent is, obviously.
No, I don't think it feels that way. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot more about Chamber of Commerce than I thought I was going to, but you had mentioned earlier that you had done some work in I guess what you'd call the news and sports, I'm going to say broadcast, but
that's what it was.
And I was thinking TV, which just goes to show you my age. So I wasn't thinking internet. But this was not TV. This was radio.
This was pure radio. There was no internet around.
Right.
We were still taking toolboxes with us to football games to screw in the connections to the phone so we could have a line back to the station to be able to broadcast.
Wow. So this was
this was in the dark ages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of how did you do that? And so you were connecting to a phone line, like bare copper.
Yep.
Connected to a phone line.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And you had to get the phone company, which at that point was not broken up like it is now, and they had to go out to the press box where you were broadcasting, and you had to get them to turn the line on.
Right.
Well, if they didn't get into the press box that Friday afternoon because the athletic director had gone home early to get ready for the game, you didn't have a line when you got there. And now you just every stadium, no matter what the size, has up. Just plug in and go.
Right.
Just the lines there all the time now.
Well, they're probably not POTS lines now.
Oh no, I doubt. I'm sure they're VoIP, really good quality. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because wow. So that's all right. So are you broadcasting? So are you broadcasting for like high school games and?
Yeah, this was small town radio stations. The largest city I worked in the media was about 80,000 at the time. So it was compared to the Dallas-Fort Worth market, it was small. And actually, it was a good experience for me for a variety of reasons. I was able to develop my voice a little bit. I had a great mentor who helped me learn how to project and how to use it. They allowed me to make mistakes because they knew. I didn't have a great voice at the time. I don't know if I have a great voice now, but
I envy your voice. I hear myself on these things, and I'm like.
But I came in with a pretty good Texas twang and that kind of thing, and I learned how to overcome that.
Yeah.
And I also listened to tapes of the major broadcasters of the time, just over and over. And how do they say that? How do they describe that? Right. And that kind of thing. So yeah, I did 3 years of football, baseball, basketball at the high school and junior college level, and then the last 2 years of my career, I was in the hard news part of it, where I was doing the afternoon block 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And I was, looking to get back into the sports end of it when the opportunity came to move into the Chamber of Commerce business. It was a great move for me and has been ever since, even though I still on occasion miss the broadcast business.
You probably you know me well enough that you probably wouldn't be surprised, but I worked at a radio station years ago, a lot of years ago, and actually, so we didn't have, so it wasn't like live broadcasts, but the drama competitions that they would have had a category for radio and TV broadcast. Mm-hmm. Which obviously wasn't broadcast, but it was part of the competition. They give you a thing, you have to cold read and different things like that. And I really enjoyed participating in those, but I guess it's a little bit different than the real world.
Well, it was a fun 5 years that I spent in that. Yeah. A lot of hours, particularly in the hard news business that doesn't ever stop.
Right.
I was on call every other weekend. It always seemed to be the weekend where something major happened in that community.
Yeah. So were you an on-the-scene reporter?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did everything. Wow. I did the afternoon anchor. So that meant my normal day I would come in at 9. Yeah. News director was already there because he went on at 6, and he was there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so I came on and I got off at 7. And after the 6 o'clock, and so I was doing depending on the situation, I was out on the scene, or I was reporting live from the studio, that kind of thing. To give you an example of and I could talk hours about some of the crazy stories, and you were kind of in the business, so but I was working a Saturday morning, and it was Valentine's Day, and all I really wanted to do, it had been a long week. All I really wanted to do was come in and do my Saturday morning 6, 7, 8 newscast. I had a little public affairs programming I had to take care of. Go home, sleep the rest of the weekend, and hope nothing happens.
Hope nothing happens.
Somebody set one of the high schools on fire.
Oh!
3 alarm. It was a 5-alarm fire, if I recall correctly. And
Jeez,
so I didn't call the news director, who asked me later why I didn't call. Well, I got lucky. And as you well know, some of that is more important than actually being there. Had I been there, I probably wouldn't have gotten this interview.
Right.
We were getting calls from people in the area around that high school telling us, the school's on fire. So I told the disc jockey who was in the other room, I said, if you get a really good, somebody give me a good description, shoot her back here to me and I got this elderly woman who was living in an apartment complex right across the street from the high school. Oh, my high school is burning. Kind of thing. Oh my gosh, I didn't have to go anywhere.
Right.
So after I finished my 8 o'clock, I went out there and started talking to the police chief. They had just finished the fire, fighting it anyway. Yeah. And so that's an example and so I was out there for the rest of the day, or at least the rest of the morning, giving reports, hourly reports as to what's going on. And there's a longer story that goes along with how we finished the rest of the weekend, but because it was a story that worked all weekend long.
Right.
But you just never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, you got to know people. I think that business really set me up well to be in the chamber business because I am by nature a very shy person. You put me in a room full of people I don't know, and I'm going to be the flower on the wall, right? Yeah. I am not going to be the one that jumps out there. I've overcome it with. I was going to say,
I think you've overcome that.
But you had to talk to people who did not want to talk with you.
Right.
Police detectives, sheriff's departments. Mm-hmm. And you got to know these people because you need, when the crunch time and you needed information, they trusted you, that you wouldn't get it wrong and that you wouldn't go quote them.
Right.
That's why you hear this all the time. Sources close to the investigation always say, right? And so it was a good experience. And the same thing with coaches don't want to really talk much on, they're getting ready for a game, but we had to go down there and walk on the field and talk to the coaches and find out which player's not going to play today and that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's real interesting to me to see how that has changed over the years from you don't talk to the coach maybe once a week, maybe if that's at a college level, to now it seems like everybody's got a voice from the coach is speaking and the team captain is speaking to the press and we've almost come to expect that to be to the point of if they don't we had Naomi Osaka that just and people were just really ripping on her for not talking to the media.
Yep.
And would you rather her do a good job playing the game, or would you rather her? And I think people want both now.
Yeah, they do, and it's a much more controlled atmosphere too.
Right.
You've got some college programs where the players are not or were not allowed to talk to the media, and so it makes it difficult. We rode the team buses with them, and I wasn't much at that time. I wasn't much older than some of the players. Right. This was community college, right? So they're 18, 19, and I'm 23, 24, and we're playing poker in the back and talking about, what's going on. So I would find out, he'd make a comment or two, and I say, I'd like to use that tonight on the air. It's okay. I'd always ask him.
Right.
And it's a little bit more challenging today, particularly with COVID and all that. Right. I can only imagine what challenges you have in being able to report on, say, a Cowboys training camp that's going on.
Yeah, I bet you're not going to be sitting in the back of the bus with the playbook.
No, you're not. Not anymore. You're not, and you're probably not going to be able to have as much access to the police departments and sheriff's departments as we did. My goal, and I learned this from several different people, is to get to know those people. As I said earlier. And I can't tell you how many times that paid off dividends when I really needed to get some information, for a story. Yeah. And it was 10 minutes to airtime. Right. I could go and say, look, I really just tell me this, answer this question, and that was all I needed, and moved on. It was an exciting experience, brought me out of my shell completely. I think it set me up for a really good career in this business. And for the first 7 or 8 years, I was really doing basically the same thing. I was writing. I was doing interviews. I was also moving into the chamber business itself because I ended up managing both the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as being the communications director for this chamber. Yeah. So it's been an interesting life. It's been a lot of fun.
I definitely see a theme of you need to make good connections with people.
Yeah, you've got to be able to do it no matter what you're doing.
People,
get to know people, because there's going to be a time when you really need to talk to them honestly, candidly, and they need to trust you. Right. And that's true even today in the business of being in the chamber / trade association.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You got to be able to trust your the people you're working with, contract negotiations and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and we'll wrap it up. So, your birthday is the 26th of December. Is that
Christmas
correct?
Day, 25th.
The 25th. How has that affected your personal economic development, especially as a young man, young fellow?
I don't think it has. It's a birthday like any other day. It was interesting when I got married. My wife's family was big on birthdays.
Yeah.
I mean, her father would have 60 people over at the house, family, friends. It'd be my parents. Okay, had a birthday. Good deal. Here's a cake. Here's a card. Here's a gift. My mother tried to do some things that were important to her as part of the family to make sure that we celebrated it. So we got to celebrate birthday cake and have birthday cake in the morning before we did Christmas and that kind of stuff. And the older I got, they would then begin to combine gifts, buy a little bit bigger things. This is both of your events, both of your Christmas present and your birthday present.
Sometimes it works in your favor, though.
Well, it does. The best part, I tell the story a lot, and my dad's not around anymore. We lost him some time ago, but I came home for Thanksgiving one year, one of the weekends I had off, and I'd just been in the media. I'd been in the media maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
Didn't have any money, and he goes, "Your tires need to be replaced." He said, "While you're here, go down to the Goodyear place.
Right.
I have an account down there. Buy what you need. Here's your budget, and that's your birthday present and your Christmas present. So 2 tires for Christmas and 2 for birthday." And it was the best present I had because I couldn't afford the tires.
Yeah.
And he was very practical, but it was all very laid back. So it has not affected.
Yeah.
I had to work it because there's no stopping. I worked many a year in the radio business on Christmas morning because I wanted New Year's morning off.
Okay.
You got a choice usually between you. There's usually you and one other person in the newsroom or whatever, or on the board. Right. I mean, my first job in radio was spinning country music records.
Right.
And so I worked Christmas Day, and that was not a big deal. And after that, I went and enjoyed Christmas.
Yeah.
My family, now I'm off on Christmas, and I don't know that it made that much of a difference in my career.
I definitely see that the fun jobs seem to require a lot of work to get to the fun, and it seems like there's a whole class of work out there. We talk about the 5-day work week and thank God it's Friday and things like the banker's hours and things like that. But there's a whole lot of people out there. There's a whole lot of really great things that you can be doing with your time that by definition mean that you're going to be working on Christmas or, working on the weekend or, busy at dinner and events and things like that. That's something to think about when you're at home enjoying the Christmas presents or whatever, or when you're at the ball game on that there's people who are working very hard behind the scenes to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And it may be fun, they may enjoy it, but they are putting a lot of effort into making that work behind the scenes.
There's a lot of evening hours, early morning hours. I've worked as many as 17 hours a day. Yeah. Fortunately, in our chamber, we don't have many weekend activities because our members really don't, except for the Christmas parade that we got rid of that I mentioned a long time ago. If your chamber is a chamber that has Convention and Visitors Bureau responsibilities and you're producing the festival, you're going to work on the weekends. Yeah. I worked numerous weekends at my first job, but I've been very fortunate that my wife understood the business. She had been in it in the past. And so she kind of got the gist of it. And it was also a small community of about 70, 80,000, and she grew up in it. She knew everybody, and she knew she'd been there to see all those festivals, mature and become big events, right? So she understood that. But I think that's just part of it. You're going to be able to have to go to Austin if you need to, or Washington, or meet that delegation that comes in. And I will tell you, I worked one day after Christmas in another community, in which the prospect decided they would do their prospect visit. I think he was looking for a free vacation that he could deduct. And we met Sunday morning on the day after Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And for 3 hours, and we went through the whole spiel. In that kind of, that's just part of the job. I think you have to be prepared for it. And in the media, there is no time off. You're going to be called 24/7.
That's like hotel business or.
Yeah, the hotel business, the meeting planning business.
Yeah.
You know, people who work for country clubs are on 24/7.
Yeah.
People who work for hotels are on 24/7. You got weddings on the weekend. You've got 3 events on Friday, and that kind of thing, and it never stops. At least now in this particular setting, we don't work much weekends.
Yeah.
At all. And the activities in the evening are usually over. We moved our annual meeting on the chamber side.
So you don't have some guy trying to get you on a podcast.
Yeah. We moved our annual meeting about 10, 11 years ago from an evening event to a noon event because we had the major companies primarily saying, move it to lunch, I can bring my staff.
Right.
Nobody wants to come at 8 o'clock at night, no matter who you have speak. And we've had some dynamic speakers over the years.
Yeah.
So it's an ever-changing business. I think the future of the chamber business is good. It's going to be a challenge. Coming out of the pandemic, how do we manage events? Obviously, hybrid's going to be one of them, but it's not just events. Mm-hmm. It's how do we manage all of these activities? And as I said early in this podcast, becoming more essential in the community, taking on and working with organizations that really make a difference.
Right. Awesome. Anything that you might want to leave with an audience, advertise or promote? Well,
no, not particularly. We have events all the time. You can check out the Chamber's events at richardsonchamber.com.
Right.
Our affiliate organization, Tech Titans, techtitans.org. We've got we're returning to hybrid events on August the 20th, full time. I'm talking about the big events. The Chamber will be producing our annual EDGE Awards, which is an Economic Development Awards program. In November, we present 8 awards to companies and individuals who've helped with economic development in Richardson. And then I'm mixing metaphors here by going back to Tech Titans, but the Tech Titans Awards Gala will be in October. And we're still taking nominations from companies in the 15 categories that we're going to present those awards.
Yeah.
So it's a busy time. It's a opportunity to restart, if you will.
Yep.
I think you'll see a lot of changes coming out of chambers of commerce in the future.
Yeah, I think with everything that's going on, we're doing hybrid meetings again now. I think it's going to be real interesting.
Yeah, I think it will be. You're gonna take a bunch of chamber professionals and turn them into television directors. That's kind of an oversimplification, but that's what you have to think about it.
Right.
We had 3 computers in the room. One was the technical director that was managing the live stream, what you saw because you're on the live stream. The other one was managing what was going on in the room and what was going on the screen.
Yep.
And you have to think of it when they show you that production truck at this Super Bowl. Let's go down and see our production guys. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. We're just not quite that sophisticated. We're not doing any video replays at this point. Let's go back and hear what did he just say?
What did he just say? Yeah.
We won't be doing that. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, Paul. And man, I just really appreciate you coming over here and bearing with the heat in the
That's
studio
not too bad.
here. But thanks a lot.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.